Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of my incredibly bad, do not take this seriously, prediction of the Democratic primaries in 2020. In the previous video, we went over the earliest two states, Iowa and New Hampshire, which are incredibly important for building momentum. Iowa, just to recap, I gave it a three-way tie. Realistically, one of them will emerge with more delegates, even if it is a statistical tie, just to acknowledge the winner. However, for all intents and purposes, I will tie them. And I gave New Hampshire to Senator Sanders by a very tiny margin. So Senator Sanders does have some momentum in this race I am simulating. Do keep in mind that this is not a perfect website because a lot of the delegate allocation is done on the precinct and county level, and this website can't really take that into account. This is just looking at raw numbers, but it's the best we can do right now. And up next we have the third race of the primary season, which is Nevada, the Nevada caucuses. And so to pull up 538's numbers, they do have Biden in a solid lead, followed by Sanders, Warren, and then Buttigieg very far beneath them. One quick thing to note is that, let me just make sure I'm getting this right. Yes, Nevada is a caucus state, and that means that you have to convince people to join your side, and there's the 15% threshold. That gives a big advantage to Senator Sanders, because Senator Sanders tends to have the most enthusiastic base. That can't really be denied, no matter what you think of his policies. And so he does have an edge going into Nevada just because of the nature of the contest, I would say. The other important thing to note, however, is that Buttigieg does not break the 15% threshold for caucuses, and Warren just barely breaks it. So Buttigieg can't receive any delegates if he only achieves this number. So what does that mean? It means that someone stands to gain from that 6.5%, assuming it is 6.5%. So let's just give my prediction. I do predict that Sanders will win Nevada. It will be a close race, though. This will be a very close race. So I predict something like this, actually. Well, Warren shouldn't get... Actually, no, we don't know. Warren kind of dropped in mid-November, December, after her spike in October. So you kind of see that here in Nevada, even. So I don't think she'll get super close to Biden and Sanders' numbers, at least not in Nevada. But I'm not underestimating her yet. She could be a big force in this race still. Okay? So already we have Bernie Sanders building up a ton of momentum. But now we move on to the first deep South state of the race, which is South Carolina. And to pull up South Carolina, just to make a point, South Carolina, Biden has a massive lead in South Carolina. He is very popular among black voters. This has been a prevailing story in this race, that Biden wins black voters by the largest margins of any candidate since... I'm not going to say that, actually. I don't know the full numbers, but Biden dominates black voters for whatever reason. And so he is projected to win South Carolina by a pretty big margin. I would give him something like 40 to 35% of the vote. Buttigieg will not do very well. Buttigieg does not do well among black voters at all, which will be a huge problem for him in this primary race, because even if he does win Iowa, let me give him Iowa. Even if he does win Iowa and gathers that kind of momentum, he has trouble in the Deep South, which has a huge number of delegates, and that was a huge problem for Senator Sanders in 2016. Georgia, 105 delegates. Alabama, 52. Virginia, 99. North Carolina, 110. So if you can't win among black voters, you're in trouble, sadly. Sanders does worse than Biden among black voters, but he definitely does better than everyone else. Especially among younger black voters. However, I don't expect him to catch Biden's number at all. Warren will not do nearly as well. And I don't expect Bloomberg to do well at all. So, something like this is what I expect out of South Carolina, Biden dominating the race. However, Sanders' momentum as he builds up victories in New Hampshire and Nevada, that can play to his advantage. Okay, so we've filled out the first 4 states of the race, and based on my projections, I did give Buttigieg Iowa, actually, even though I think Sanders has a slight advantage. But just to prove a point, I gave it to Buttigieg. Even if Buttigieg does win Iowa, his troubles among black and Hispanic voters are going to be a huge problem for him in this primary race. Because without black and Hispanic support, you have a huge problem moving forward. And that's why Joe Biden is currently projected to be the winner. But just for the sake of completeness, I'm going to move forward with this race anyway. So I'm going to end this video here actually and move on to part 3 later on, because what happens next is Super Tuesday, which is the biggest delegate haul of the entire primary season. We have states like Texas with 228 delegates and California 416. That is far more than any other state. In fact, the only bigger delegate haul than California is the superdelegates, who can vote for whomever they wish. They're not bound to anyone based on popular vote. So yeah, as I have said previously, I'm terrible with political projections, but this is just for fun and for you guys, the viewers. So in the next video, we will move on to Super Tuesday, which is probably the most exciting night of the primary, and I will catch you in the next video.